Hi, you guys. Welcome to Word to Hannah. Welcome back if you're returning. So, um, I want to talk about manipulation in instances where there is a form of manipulation by way of like abuse. I don't know exactly what the term is, but it can apply to any kind of relationship or interactions that we have with anyone. So it could look like, our kid, telling us no and then pouting or throwing a tantrum until we give in. It could be saying no to, somebody we're in a romantic relationship with, and then maybe they give the silent treatment or, one word answers or whatever until, we change our mind and do whatever they asked us to do, or whatever the situation was. Or it could be social situations where it's like, okay, well, we're all doing this and you're not doing it, so we're just gonna all move funny towards you um, until you tell us that what we're doing is okay, and basically show some sort of humility, like until you and join in. Humility in, not really, genuine humility, but more like humiliation, um, for having, gone a different route. Um, with, um, I'm trying to choose my words because I was about to say that with there being so much sorcery and witchcraft nowadays, I want to address this, but I'm not too sure that that's actually correct. In my opinion, witchcraft has not increased, it's just been revealed. I don't believe that it's like all of a sudden people are into it. I think that more people are, new people maybe being exposed to it the same way that new people are being exposed to Christ. So people who did not have a religion, who did not have a spiritual connection with Jesus, or anyone who may have like been into sorcery or just was indifferent either way, um, or did have a relationship with Jesus, um, maybe into sorcery, and then people who it is who thought they had a relationship with Jesus who used to be into sorcery, or who were just inactive within their own spiritual life, may, or I feel like, turn to Christ. But I don't believe that it's like all of a sudden everybody's into it. I don't know, like I really haven't really sat in that, because I do recognize that something has been opened up around here, with all that opening portals and CERN and all of that. I know that that has to do with opening realms, probably to the second heavens and to demonic realms and things like that. And it does appear that there is something that is released that influences what takes place in people's minds without their being cognizant of it. But I don't want to lump that all into one and say that it's all people involving themselves in sorcery, because there is obviously something that's going on that is included, that's part of this, that may be separate. Um, but I don't know that more people are into it, but I do know that what was a secret before is not a secret now. Um, But that doesn't mean that for those of us who are in our 40s, when we were teenagers, that doesn't mean that our classmates, or even when we were in our 20s, that they were not into sorcery. It's just maybe the difference is that the people who will be in their 40s, you know, the generation that is now, that where sorcery and witchcraft and things like that is being like commercialized and sold in stores, they will be aware of it because the dialogue exists, where we may not have been aware of it because the dialogue did not exist. Um, anyway, um, but nevertheless, when it comes to these things, though, that manipulation, sometimes that that manipulation, especially if it comes out of nowhere, especially if it's like there is no incident that occurred. In the examples I mentioned before, where you can, whether it's a kid, a romantic relationship, or any other social situation where it's like you didn't do what I wanted you to do in the physical realm, that can also take place in the realm of the spirit, where it's like you didn't do what I wanted you to do in the realm of the spirit. So now in the realm of the physical, now I'm going to give you the silent treatment. Now I'm going to move funny. Now I'm going to turn people against you. So story time. So, a company I used to work for, is where I became aware of some of the things that it is that have been taking place in my life. In the past, I made the mistake of saying that it was a specific employer who was behind. Like in the past, I was out on the knowledge, so I was thinking that people were guilty of things they were not guilty of. I was thinking it was this person when it wasn't. I was thinking it was this company. I was thinking that it was that finite, not realizing that it's the enemy's attack on my life as an entirety, and he's using these different resources no matter where I am, until I submitted myself to Jesus and addressed it and began to take the necessary actions, as well as showed up. I don't want to go too much further into that, but a lot of the stuff, like especially like the people, just kind of talking crazy about me, before I even like show up or even meet anybody, where it's like the second they become aware that I'm in close proximity, it's almost like a Bluetooth signal gets released into their brain, and then they just like convert into my enemy for a minute, where it's just like, the same way, if your Bluetooth is on, you have a Bluetooth device on and you have your phone on scan, and then when that Bluetooth device, or anybody else's for that matter, is anywhere within proximity, they can, the phone picks up on it, and then you have the option to connect. That's what it be seeming like be happening, but I digress. So, but I became aware that, wait, hold on. What I thought was specific to this employer here, I experienced it there, and there, and there. And, I honestly, it's something that I've been meaning to get on this channel and talk about, because we have to be careful when it comes to these things, to ensure that we don't wind up destabilizing ourselves, turning away from opportunities that God has given us, or otherwise being targeted / bullied out of the things that it is that we're destined to have, because of this program, because of these things that it is that's taking place. Because we don't have orphan spirits. If we're in the body of Christ, we're not orphans. We don't live here, but that doesn't mean that we're orphans. We have parents. We're not wanderers. We have a home. It's in heaven. And we're not, we don't have to worry about the spirit of Pisgah, because we're going to obey God and we're going to do what it is that he calls us to do. So it's just like making sure that we're not responding in a way where it's just like, oh, these people are targeting, where I'm going to leave, because that could be like, that is one of the talking points is being used to try to make it seem like the person who's being targeted is unstable. In all actuality, there's something that is legitimately taking place in the physical realm that is influencing the decision to walk away from environments where people are responding to things towards you without you doing anything to garner the response that they're giving. That's because it's an abnormal thing to do. It's an abnormal thing to experience. It's an abnormal thing to witness. It's weird. But it's important to like stay grounded anyway. But that's not the point. So story time. So previous employer. So without going into too much detail, this was after, a period where, there was a day when everybody just kind of stopped talking to me. And all kind of weird stuff like that was happening. So this is after that. This is after or around the time where it's like people are, mirroring me, wearing the same colors as me on purpose. I become aware that there's monitoring going on in our apartment and things like that. There's, random luxury cars parked near my house that aren't supposed to be there. And our observations, because the neighborhood I lived in was affluent, and it was just like, oh, she really lives there. That kind of thing. And then attacks on my source of income, trying to attack my income so that one of the talking points could be my income or discuss my income in a negative way, but I digress. So those things were going on. And I had this dream. We got a new manager, and then somebody who knew was brought onto the team. And it seemed like everything was going to go cool. Like everything seemed to be, fine. We're meeting, we're chit-chatting, think like we're meshing. Everything seemed completely fine. Actually, maybe those things were going on. Now I'm wondering about the timeline. Because a lot happened there, and I've never sat down and just wrote it all out. And it, according to how it all took place. So maybe the mirroring and all the weirdo stuff happened at that point. Let's scratch that part and put that part on. We'll put a pin in it, because I'm not sure if that happened before or after. But anyway, so the three of us are getting along swell. And I have a dream. And in that dream, I see the two of them, the manager and my teammate, walking up a hill somewhere. Kind of looked like a graveyard in hindsight. And they turn around and look over their shoulder, over their left shoulder, and look at me. And it's just like, are you coming? I was like, no, I'm gonna stay over here. And so I didn't go in the dream. And then I stopped getting invited to the meetings. I noticed, the energy is weird. One of the things that I used to say all the time is, it's weird in here. Anytime I would sense something weird had happened, or was happening, or was about to happen within a short window of time, I would always feel it, smell it, sense it in the air, and I'd be like, it's weird in here. And usually within that time frame, there was some sort of betrayal, whether myself or somebody else. Some bad news came in, or people got into it. But, all of a sudden, so it was one of those days where it's like, it's weird in here. And, it was a lot of my teammate all of a sudden going to a meeting in her office without me. That kind of thing just kept happening over and over and over again. It was just obvious that, I was being pushed out. Around the time, that's when, certain very, very damaging rumors started getting spread about me. And my manager, was giving me the cold shoulder. And I actually heard her at one point. God allowed me to hear her as she's coming out of her office talking to somebody else who I knew to have been actively betraying me. She's like, oh, we'll spread it around then. And so she's encouraging the people that, that I coached, trained, etc., to spread rumors around the office and around everywhere about me that weren't true. And then it came time for something happened. I don't know if what happened is a result of why she wound up stepping out of that position. It was something weird that happened that I won't go into. But she steps out of that position. Somebody gets let go. She gets moved into that person's position. Now her position is open. And I think I applied for it, but I'm not. No, I don't think I did, because these things were happening behind the scenes. And so the other person on the team who had joined the team maybe a year after me, because I'm not trying to act like I'm just a zip-zap snapper or anything like that, but I was instrumental in creating the quality team because it didn't exist before. So it didn't make sense for the role to go to anybody else but me. So
they're gonna cut you off from having this or that, or being in connection with that.
My bad. That was mindset shifting. I know she won't mind that little clip popped in there just now. But she gets slid into the position, and I didn't even know it was available or anything like that, because it wasn't posted and made available to everyone. So she essentially began to like groom her to take over her role, like right after all of that happened, like right around that time that happened. Now granted, there were a lot of other things that was taking place around that time, within that space, but that was one of those things. And it was just, it's one of those situations where it's like, I didn't go, and having gone would have been spiritually a bad move for me, because I've never intended on having anything to do with Satan, even as the sinner, and knowing that sinning was wrong in God's eyes. I never sinned with the intention of separating myself from God, even though that is what sinning does. I mean, in hindsight, it seems so foolish. But I had no intentions on aligning myself with the enemy. So the idea of being aligned with him, by way of anybody else, it's never been something that I really had an appetite for. This is going to have to continue because I have something to do.